Stephen Hamilton, thank you so much for joining me again. Look, when did politicians stop worrying about debt and deficits?
Yeah, it's a good question. If you remember, it took a very long time after the global financial crisis in sort of 2008 in order to get back to surplus. Right, we didn't get back to budget balance until right before the pandemic. Right, that last budget was basically balanced, and then obviously the pandemic happened, and we spent a lot of money and had very large deficits. And then the only reason, frankly, that we had a surplus after that was because of the rivers of gold that have been flowing through to the Treasury. I think absent those, I don't think we'd be in surplus at all. So, that's kind of extraordinary. It took a decade to repair the budget and get back to normal. And then now it's going to take at least another decade to get back there.
Yeah, the rivers of gold being that boom because of record prices for coal and iron ore and gas and all that kind of stuff. And like there's money pouring in like nobody's business. Now it's all gone, of course. And we've got 10 years of deficits ahead of us. But why is that not number one? How could the government have run through all that money so that we've now got $1 trillion debt facing us next year? What has changed in our political culture?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I do think that there is a degree of complacency out there. And I don't know if it's young people. I mean, if people even younger than us, who maybe they've never experienced, the consequences, right, of high debt, right? We've been able to fund basically whatever we've needed to fund, right? The government has grown and grown and grown and grown and grown over the past 15 years. We're offering people more and more, right? Increasing everything, the NDIS, higher health spending, increasing the dole, increasing family payments, right? We're doing that all the time. And we haven't really, had to raise people's taxes to pay for it, right? And so I think people have just gotten used to this kind of gravy train of money coming from governments without thinking that eventually something has to give.
Yeah, but the thing is, you say, something has to give. Nothing has given as far as most people who are concerned. I mean, it's starting to give in Victoria. That's absolutely true. I mean, even the Labor government there is now having to cut positions, etc., in the public service. But what will give one day?
Yeah, I mean, I think have a look at what's going to happen to taxes over the next 10 years. So we have a big structural deficit right now, really, really big. And if you look at the budget, that deficit just automatically goes away over the next 10 years, like magic. But it isn't magic. It's that every single one of us is going to be paying more and more and more and more of our income in taxes over that time through bracket creep. And you have to imagine that in a boiling the frog kind of way, eventually people have to feel that, right? They have to feel it in their living standards not improving, right? They have to feel it in their lives not getting better over time. They have to feel it in a sort of stagnant economy, which is slowly being strangled.
Yeah, but Labor's got a great thing going here that against what you describe. I mean, yes, living standards have fallen, but what it's saying is we're not the problem, we're the solution because we just give you back more of your money. Here's an energy bill relief. Here's a little handout here. Here's a little handout there to meet those costs. And it's like it's money from heaven. So they both are the architects of the problem, but posing as the solution to it. Can you just draw a contrast between this spend-happy government we have now and the Gillard government, which, was supposed to be a bad one with Treasurer Wayne Swan, where the Liberals said he was terrible. What's the difference? Because you worked in Treasury under Wayne Swan.
Yeah, they get a bit of a bad rap, I think. I mean, look, we can all quibble about sorts of policies that they introduced and other things, but I can tell you for sure that after the global financial crisis, the deficit that those guys generated was like an albatross around their neck, right? They were the guys who pushed the budget into deficit after the Howard and Costello team had paid off all the Labor debt and got the budget back to surplus. So they were sort of politically terrified of being, plastered as, the guys who'd racked up all this debt. So they committed themselves to get back to surplus as quickly as possible. And to be honest, I mean, I used to work at Treasury. They really, really wanted to get back to surplus. Look, I will say it didn't happen, and the main reason it didn't happen is not because they were profligate. It's not because they were lazy. It's because the Treasury budget forecasts were inaccurate, and the revenue never came, and so the surplus never came. But I think on the political side, they cared a lot. It mattered a lot to them, and they gave things up to get there. And I think that culture, I just don't think politicians today fear this. I don't think they fear, hey, we're the government running a big debt. And so as a result, what's the cost, right? I'll give you one number. This year, the deficit, if the government had just sat on its hands, done nothing, the deficit would be $5 billion. Instead, it's $47 billion. All of the decisions the government has taken has turned a $5 billion deficit to a $47 billion deficit. They were this close to getting a surplus. It wouldn't be hard to turn a $5 billion deficit into a surplus, and they blew it away, right? So obviously that's showing us that they couldn't care less.
Well, Stephen Hamilton, you are an eyewitness to a cultural shift where 10 years ago Labor considered any deficit of any size terrible, where now it can live with a $1 trillion debt and think, we don't need to change. It is just extraordinary what's happened. Stephen Hamilton, thank you so much indeed for your time.
Cheers, Andrew.